Hi everyone, welcome to the latest episode of Liquidware Chats. In this episode, I talk to David Butler-McAllister, who's the COO at Access IT Automation. We start by looking at David's career in EUC to date. Then David tells us a little bit about Access IT Automation and what they do, in particular their access capture service, which has FlexApp integration. We then continue our conversation talking in general about application strategy and how it's still very complex and there's a lot of issues around it, even in 2024. And then we finish with our general discussion around the impact of AI on EUC. Really hope you enjoy the episode. Thanks very much. David, how are you doing?
Great, James. Thanks for having me.
Great. It's great to have you on, David. So, David, I just wanted to get an understanding. How did you get into this wonderful world of EUC?
It's I've generally always been in the application management side of EUC. Career spanning the last 28 odd years. Started off in the insurance industry, all things technical support. So I had a good grounding. I learned things from network switches to even creating RJ45 cabling and patching and all sorts of good stuff. Token ring, Madge smart cards, Novell NetWare, ArcServe backups. I was the jack of all trades in my early part of my career, and then moved.
Yeah.
Sorry, James. Yeah.
No, I was good. I was just going to say, like we all start in tech support. like I did years on a help desk. I started in one of the biggest banks here in Ireland in tech support. So we all kind of start there, and it gives you that good grounding for developing your skills further. So yeah, if anyone is looking to get into tech, go work on a help desk. It's the best and the worst.
It is. It really is. I moved out of insurance and into banking, so I moved into Coots Bank, and sort of ended up being more of a trade floor support. So I moved out of jack of all trades more into sort of specialist, looking after the trade floor.
Now, I talked to someone who looked after a trade floor, and it sounds like the most highly pressurized job because those guys take absolute no nonsense. If there's like a millisecond of an issue, they will jump all over you.
100%.
Yeah. I think it was a friend of mine, and he was working for a trading company here in Dublin, and each trader had a dedicated server, a Citrix server, not just, so a server generally that would hold 25 people. Each one had one server with whatever, back in the day, the highest network capability possible. And it was just like, and I was saying, how much does that cost? And he's saying, if you think about what they're doing, it doesn't matter.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, you just have to be extremely proficient in Excel and make sure the uptime for any app updates just it happened when they was not at their desk. Right. So the opportune moments when they're grabbing a coffee or they're down at the gym, you made sure you updated to the latest version of Reuters or DataStream back in the day. I think they're a combined technology nowadays. But yeah, real-time data, uptime, app updates. Back in the day, obviously with floppy disk CDs running around, USB keys, it got a bit easier. But everything's online now. Everything's cloud-based. So it's a lot more instantaneous how you've got to have updates being achieved. So yeah, that was a good grounding at Coots. Then I moved on to JP Morgan, where I was predominantly got into application packaging. And then after a few years of doing it from quite a junior level, I started running and managing the team there. So, at the peak of my career at JP Morgan, I had about 85 to 90 staff, roughly, globally, spanning, I probably snatched 3 hours sleep. I had people in Singapore, India, Houston, New York, Bournemouth, London. Wow. And I was running all of their packaging, testing, delivery, for all of the sort of banking apps and vendor apps.
And in terms of packaging, what would you have been using then?
There's a real mixture, really real mixture back in the day there. We were pioneers and probably leaders of getting onto SoftGrid, which then became
Became
AppV.
AppV. Yeah.
And then we moved strategically to use a Symantec product. I think it's called SVW, which then disappeared over about 3 or 4 years' time. It disappeared. And yeah, MSI was still very much an integral part of that whole process. But it was a very long process. App discovery, back and forth questions with product owners and vendors. But that's where I got my good ground in, and I started sort of managing very large teams in EUC and making sure, again, being a very large organization, delivery, first time app updates, and no backing up or backing out of things. First time was always important to get something right first time. So managed to get to know a very lot of good influential people in the industry from a vendor perspective. So yeah, had some really good relationship building there. And then after JP Morgan, I moved into consulting. So my background there still stayed within the banks. So I worked heavily at Morgan Stanley with their Windows 7 migrations and Windows 10 migrations, and also at UBS doing their VDI, their app management preparation for VDI at UBS Bank as well. So I've mainly been in the financial services area, and that really does flag up, the importance of getting things done right and done right first time, and the importance of testing. So
yeah, absolutely. Like I worked in the banking industry doing VDI projects as well. Like I was so I'm aware of all the issues. I had to package up apps for AppV and all that kind of thing. So yeah, I'm well aware of the complexity that goes into some of those applications. And you go, how it does what? It has what requirements? Are you kidding me? It's just, and like, or like the fact that like some of these apps are mission critical, yet they're built so badly. The person who built them is either left or died, or and no one has any clue. But it's the most critical application in the bank. And this is the thing you see them maintaining things like Zenap 5 farms and you're like, I worked in a bank, and I worked in the networking section, and there was a Windows 3.1 machine, and this particular bank, the IT operations had been outsourced to HP. HP brought in their team, and they're looking at all the machines, doing a survey, and they say, "What's that? Don't touch it. What is it? Just don't touch it." That's the verb. And then they were like, "Hold on, this is running Windows 3.1. Yep, you don't touch it." It's just crazy the amount of legacy stuff. And I suppose that brings a wider question. It's like, in 2024, why are applications still so complicated, and why is it the biggest part of what we do in VDI migrations? It's just, it seems like it should be getting easier.
It should.
And people say, "Oh, more people are using SaaS apps." Yeah, no,
and it's an unfortunate thing. I mean, I was I was very much hoping that by this time, 2024, we would see a lot more web applications, a lot more applications delivered from the cloud, and not so many local client type installations. However, it takes a long time, and MSI technology has been around since the inception of the first versions of Office. It was built really so that Microsoft had a decent way to deliver and deploy Office, and the MSI technology is so versatile in what you can do with it, and there's so many vendors out there, suppliers, packagers, forever have always heavily edited and worked around different ways of doing things, whether it's custom actions or creating stub executables, etc., to get around issues and problematic ways to install apps with a variety of different dependencies or prerequisites. And MSI stood the test of time because it's been so solid. It's a database type technology. You've got file and registry components. It's all table based. It's solid. I've noticed over the years Microsoft, there's some areas there where they kind of really want to push forward, and it's difficult for them, I think, because the technologies they have, they obviously acquired SoftGrid and become AppV. They've got MSIX, which is a good technology and getting better, but there's still issues in trying to get the community, as the developer community or vendor community, to switch to that as a default sort of platform or mechanism.
And do you have any opinion about why it is so difficult to get adoption of MSIX?
Again, it's the ratio of I don't like using the word compatibility in this day. Back 5-6 years ago, I definitely would be talking about compatibility. How I phrase this in the community when I talk to people and customers, I talk about this as suitability. So it's whether or not MSIX is a suitable platform and product for you to use for application packaging and deliver those apps in that format. They're not at the same parity as AppV. AppV, as you know, again, got better. I've always stated this as well when I work on big programs. It's about the effort you put into it. So you can automate so far with AppV or MSIX. If you put more effort into those products, you'll get a higher ratio out. MSIX is and will get better. AppAttach has some great potential as well. The things I see, interestingly, are things like the Microsoft Store. They now support MSIXs, whereas before Microsoft really was only trying to tie that down to use UWP apps, AppX, etc. A lot of MSIX now is in the app, the Microsoft Store, and also in Winget. But the adoption still is very slow. It's going to take a long time for people to adopt to those sort of techniques. It's learning again.
Absolutely. And I suppose from our perspective, and I know you have embraced FlexApp, and we have never said FlexApp is an MSIX replacement. It's a companion solution. And maybe you can tell us a little bit about your access capture solution, which obviously is there to aid and ease the application migration process.
Absolutely. So access capture was ultimately born out of frustration, really, of me running, managing and packaging and testing teams and delivery deployment teams. There's so many things that can be done quicker, better, and in an automated fashion. So when companies look at access and look at access capture, we are ultimately an enablement tool. We can enable people to get onto modern platforms, modern delivery, modern package types and deployment types by use of automation. We do this on bulk. Our framework is a set of APIs. And to be very open with you, James, it's kind of great to talk to you about this particular part. We've spent less time, and that's in a positive context, working with FlexApp technology from Liquidware because it's written in such a good modern way. Our development team have been able to pick up your documentation, your APIs, and integrate it with our solution absolutely at ease. We've not had to pester or annoy your development or technicians and engineers. We've just got on with it and managed to integrate so much quicker than any other technology that we've worked with that we've over the years.
Our PM Steve Hajak for FlexApp would be very pleased to hear that because his team do a phenomenal job, and I think, as you said, the integration due to the APIs is just really easy for these integrations, and we've seen this with other vendors as well. So it is, and that's the whole point of what we're trying to do. Is we want to increase the integrations we have, and that's why we've made it we've designed it in this way.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's going back to some points previously, and it relates to what I'm going to talk to now, is that it's difficult for some organizations to make that change and leap of faith onto a new platform or new package or deployment type. And that's where I think some of the, not failings of MSIX, I think the adoption of MSIX is challenging because MSI is so easy and robust and it just works. So
Yeah.
it's a very complicated, the EUC space in the last few years has got, because people have tried stateless VDI for a long, long time. AVD is there and available for people to try. Is solutions, or are solutions, sorry, cost effective in a stateless VDI environment or not? And then Microsoft then bring out Windows 365, which is stateful, and you get a dedicated machine, but it is cloud hosted, so you've got a bit of a hybrid option there, but equally quite costly. So how are you going to get your existing MSIs working in a on-premise and on laptops and on VDI, stateless or stateful, using traditional software delivery mechanisms like SCCM and MSI? Well, you're going to be able to do it to an extent. Is it going to be the best experience for your end users? No. Do you want to be able to move around from a laptop to a desktop and onto a VDI and seamlessly get your icons appear and your delivery of your apps available?
Because people want to work from
100%.
anywhere, they don't want to care about how their apps are delivered or anything. They just want them to be there when they log into whatever particular platform they decide to utilize.
100%, and that's the challenge sometimes with talking to customers, clients, about why it's important to look at your application strategy, and it's always been something I get quite passionate about when I talk to organizations, is that unfortunately, and it is massive unfortunately, application strategy and management is always an afterthought.
Yes, exactly. And it's something we've thought about quite a bit as well. And we actually have, I'm going to link it in the show notes. We have a white paper all around application strategy. And what one of the things we kind of decided with that white paper was that some companies, they don't know where to start.
They don't.
They really don't. Like, at this stage, you would think they would. We've been through so many iterations and so many migrations across Windows platforms, but some companies are still like, I don't know where to start here. And I suppose that kind of, when you get to the scale of the companies you're talking about, that's a major headache, because the bank I worked with that did their VDI migration, that was 15,000 users. So you've probably done similar or above. Like, that's a big headache. And even on that project, it ended up with, because lack of automation and that kind of thing, they ended up with lots of silos of applications, just because some of them couldn't be packaged into virtual formats and that kind of thing. And then there's some that just obviously can't be. Like, if you look, say, in the healthcare, Epic for years wouldn't let you even virtualize it. If you even suggested you were virtualizing, they like, well, your support's null and void if you do that. So
absolutely. I mean, organizations, I think the strategy part is, when you commit to a strategy, it's then you have to follow through with it, and I think it scares some people out there. Maybe the operations or engineering managers think, no, I'm happy with MSI, it does what I need it to do, but will it work for all these future modern style approaches and really help the end user with their customer experience? You know, that it's the age of DEX at the moment, right? Digital employee experience is key. Moving and transitioning, remote working from laptops to whichever sort of product.
I've got a saying around this. Like, yes, it is all about DEX, but like, we work in EUC. There's a user in that word, and yet it's been forgotten for quite a while. Whereas I think now DEX has kind of become to the forefront and has highlighted the importance of happy end users, because you do have things like, if an end user's not happy, then maybe they look for another job, or they're dissatisfied and unproductive. So, we're not in the days now where, well, some companies do, but you get this really locked down Citrix desktop or some sort of VDI platform. You can do basically nothing. You can, all the internet is restricted. Like, people just don't want to do that. They have no time for that anymore. And generationally, that has changed. Like, when I first started, like, you get a thin client, lockdown VDI desktop. There you go.
Yeah.
So
And it's an interesting scenario out there at the moment as well, because you do have I almost see there's two categories. It's quite interesting. You have one customer that is pure MSI SCCM delivered, and they just don't want to change. They're just fixated on that's the right way, and they will make it stick like that, even if they try other options for stateless or stateful, or they'll stay on stateful for that reason, and Windows 365. And then you have the other companies which have tried a bit of everything, and now they're in a very awkward situation, because they have MSIs being delivered through SCCM. They might have manual applications being installed or apps hosted on a file there, or web apps, and then they have a number of other different types of technologies delivering applications in different ways for different use cases. They might have a bit of AppV and then some other types of products. So I know there are some organizations out there with probably 3 different package types and 2 to 3 different delivery types. And it's just a headache. Like how much work on a packager now, and someone testing these different scenarios of an MSI delivered via SCCM, or the same MSI delivered via Intune with it's a real prerequisite that we've noticed in the last year. Is a lot of organizations are moving to Intune, and that's great, and it's a fantastic product for certain pieces of management and endpoint management, etc. Application delivery and application management, it's okay. SCCM is probably still more robust and better, but anyone moving to Intune, all of a sudden now you're looking after operationally lots of different types of the same app, but maybe deploying in a different way through a different system. And it's a lot of overheads on the operational teams that, again, Access IT, we try to alleviate that with our product set, that we can help package, we can help create the deployment objects, we can test to make sure things are okay before QA testing and then delivery out into production. So we're trying to automate all of those different parts that need manual work. We're trying to get those automated for the end customer, but because there's such a mixture of technologies out there, and it goes back to application strategy. People that may move to Windows 365 or AVD or any other type of desktop as a service platform really need to consider and rethink their app strategy, so that they can possibly consolidate all the different technologies they may have used before and get onto one and move forward.
Yeah. No, I think the app strategy piece is absolutely crucial to kind of before you start even thinking about consolidation. It's kind of the, it's the first point where you really have to determine what you're going to do and what your strategy is going to be going forward. Because as you said, we are getting into use cases which are getting more and more diverse, because of the amount of devices we have and how people access things. Like, and people aren't just stuck to laptops. You've got portables. I get messages on my phone. I've got applications on my phone, on my watch, all of these, all these different options. So your applications have to be highly adaptive to be able to be delivered to your user base.
Agree. Yeah, totally.
Excellent. So just maybe tell us a little bit more detail about what Access Capture actually does.
Sure. So Access Capture is a framework of APIs. We can create from any type of installer an output to an MSI. So a loose set of files or an executable install routine. We have a very interactive way that we can package applications and create a robust MSI. So you have a starting point. We're not just about taking the customer's already packaged applications. We might want to create them first ourselves, or the customer might want us to get them in a more robust status first. And of course, that then supports legacy traditional deployment and SCCM as well. So we take that burden away from the whole back and forth working with an app discovery team. Have you got the install files? Have you got the licenses? And what's the instructions? We can help them create those installation instructions and the robust MSI out the back. Once we have a robust MSI or any form of MSI technology from a customer, we can then move it forward in a bulk approach using our set of APIs to convert that into any type of technology. And in particular, talking here today is about Liquidware FlexApp. So we can take those MSIs and create either a FlexApp or a FlexApp 1 package as an output. And we can consume them, from a workflow tool, from any type of workflow tool, because we're API driven, or simply from a CSV list. We get point to a share of applications, or the logic can understand how the makeup of an application works, whether it's a parent with other dependencies or prereqs. And literally, press of a button, as long as you've got a certain amount of virtual machines set up, we could just queue manage and work through one machine at a time, and it would spit out an app after 5-10 minutes, depending on the size of the app.
How many applications? Machines. What can you do at one go, or
it's limitless based on the number of virtual machines? Yeah. What's
the most you've done?
So we have had one customer that gave us 100 machines. We was cranking out 100 apps at a time. So that, obviously not every single application is going to work, but when you work with technologies such as FlexApp, you're getting a lot higher ratio out the back than other technologies. So we've been able to crank through 100 at a time in one particular account. Testing is very important, and we've had customers use our product for testing applications, interestingly, that have been packaged on one operating system, such as Windows 7 with a certain version of Office, for example. And a customer wanted us to test all their 500 applications from one version of Office and operating system to another to see whether or not their the investment they made in their packaging for Windows 7 program, they could carry over into Windows 10 migration. We tested all those applications, 500, and we determined 80% were good. Those 80% didn't have a version of Office, but they still worked from Win 7 to Win 10. The 20% we was able to highlight that didn't work was because a different version of Office had the root folder added into it, so add-ins weren't loading. So we could pinpoint and showed to the packaging team, this 20% of apps have add-ins, they integrate with Office. These ones need remediation and repackaging, but your other 80% of your estate is good. You don't have to go through retesting, remediating, repackaging everything from Win 7 to Win 10, because we've highlighted this through smoke testing capabilities, which we do for all formats of package types. So that's huge time saving. We did that.
Yeah, not just time saving, cost saving as well. Like huge. Massive cost saving for that. You only have like 20% of your applications you have to remediate. That's phenomenal.
It's crazy. I think we reduced the time from something like a 3-month effort down to 3 weeks. So it's a crazy amount of resource time cost saving. Huge.
Yeah, because yourself, like generally these migration projects, the timelines are crazy and not thought out, and someone has taken the decision to push out way quicker than it probably should be in a lot of cases. But those kind of time savings then help with those kind of migration projects.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So where do you see application strategy going, or what do you predict in the future where we're going with applications in general?
I mean, I would love to see more adoption of cloud-based, cloud-delivered applications or web applications, but then obviously that is counterproductive in the world of what I'm in, because I'm a big fan of desktop applications and different styles of package formats, but and delivery. However, end users, they're going to adopt the cloud more and more. Legacy is not going away anytime immediate, but more people are going to need a quicker response to getting the same app being delivered on the multiple different platforms that they use. So honestly, I don't see MSI disappearing overnight. I thought it would a long time ago, and it's standing its test of time and will do forevermore. But I see customers are really going to need to have that strategy so as to internally help their operations and engineering teams not have to repackage, redeploy, and create multiple objects. It's happening everywhere where I speak to different people. There's just too too much overhead on the engineering and ops teams, and the strategy to move to one, possibly two, is the idealistic view going forward, in my opinion.
Just on the kind of future state, where do you see AI coming into application packaging?
So an interesting view. I did talk about this internally with the team recently, and it's a difficult one really to adopt. I think AI into a packaging, whether it's automation or other manual processes around packaging, because it's one of those kind of engineering processes which it can sometimes be a bit grey, like dependent on various other aspects. As an example, you'll go to one customer that uses Symantec as a product, and you'll have to do various whitelisting to make sure an exe will run up and not be blocked, or etc. And you go to another customer that uses a different product, and it does or doesn't do the same thing. So when you're packaging, you get different sort of results or issues or problems crop up because of those sort of scenarios. But yeah, the way I see it maybe working is to collectively get the right information from whatever it can out there in the industry to say which is the most suitable or latest versions of like dependency products. I mean, those kind of things could be kind of cool to add into an automated packaging process. You know, we know from a install instruction or from the vendor that you need to use XYZ, but actually there is a newer version of that dependency. Will or won't it work? And maybe calling AI to ask, has anyone else out there used this version of a dependency to work with that? They're more so the areas. Apart from that's more the technology engineering side. I think maybe on the UAT side of things, it could become quite interesting to be able to ask AI, is there anything else maybe I should be functionally testing on this application? Because you know I'm not quite experienced with this. You know, could be Adobe Creative Cloud, and I want to create something.
Sure, yeah, exactly. Whereas if you've got AI and it has access to all of the vendor release notes and documentation, then the UAT testing could be sped up because it just flies through, runs all the tasks that it should do in the application and that kind of thing. So
yeah, I think that's where I see an area.
So what you're saying is packaging is more of an art, but UAT could be automated to utilizing AI.
That's my version of answering that question. Yeah, at this time. I mean,
at this time, and it obviously depends on the language model and how that's built with what knowledge, because that's how these things function. So yeah, and what about kind of AI in general in EUC? Is there any kind of areas where you really see it being of benefit, or any other thoughts around AI in general?
Endpoint talking back into DEX, endpoint endpoint notification and awareness to end users. Prompting them that they've got some training coming up and using AI to do that, because it just knows within the system that they've got pending training, and these are usually done with email alerts and as such. But doing things like that, I think is a really cool use of AI.
Yeah, I recently was at an EUC event here in Dublin, and there was a Microsoft guy there, and he was talking about how he uses Copilot, and he basically at the end of the day sets a task. And then in the morning, he gets a summary of all his emails and what the high points were and any action points. All of this presented for him first thing in the morning, and I just like, wow, that's brilliant. Like, just that kind of increase in productivity is really good. And then, as you said, like around decks that it could detect. Now, I do hesitate a little bit about allowing AI to remediate without some sort of human interaction. That kind of, because if you think about, AI would be based on, what's the most efficient thing to do. well, that server's running slow. Let's boot the 25 users off. Then it'll be run
Yeah, that's not good.
perfectly well. So yeah. And I even talked with this to people from other vendors around, who are in the deck space like we are, and we both agreed that there has to be some human. Like AI can go, I recommend we do this. Actually, no, we're not going to do that, because that's going to be a woeful user experience, because they won't be able to work. So yeah, I think guided AI assistance is where I kind of lean to, and also things like, you know, being able to upload all the documentation and have that within the applications to be able to access very quickly and ask questions to. I think those are some really good use cases in EUC.
Yeah, totally agree.
But it's a brave new world we're in. So you know, as always, things are changing very quickly in EUC, and AI is even quicker. Like it's just mental how quickly things are changing, and how. But we are seeing them trickling into EUC more and more, and we, you know, I've already seen a couple of vendors have AI. We have AI in one of our solutions, Command Control, have done from day one. So
yeah,
it's definitely going to, and I think also one area where I see it is the software development. It really should speed up that
huge
process.
yes,
Like,
absolutely.
yeah. I know it's something we're looking at internally, even if it's just like, you know, here's some code, test it.
It does.
And not.
There's no doubt, James. It does. I mean, I'm not a developer, but I'm hearing internally from some of our internal staff that, you know, gone are the days almost where we all used to probably do this, get onto Google and start to figure out how to do some sort of reg expression in a batch file or VB script, or more modern days trying to create something.
That was the only way I'm not a script person. That was how I scripted. I just went to Google, copy paste, changed what I need, whatever variables I need in parameters, and then that was how I scripted.
Yeah, I was very similar. So nowadays, obviously now with AI, 100% agree that this is a way to generate code.
I wish I had it back in the day with some of the things.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be very interesting to see how it's going to change the landscape of engineers and development going forward, because the acceleration, nobody's possibly tried to calculate this, but the acceleration of product development and speed of release times now absolutely should increase and improve. Be wait and see.
A lot of this is wait and see, because you know, obviously we've been through. There's been a lot of hype, and things, in my opinion, seem to be calming down a little bit. There's still lots of development, but and you know, we saw last week Nvidia's stock started to drop for the first time, and quite dramatically. So it does seem like at the moment we're in a bit of a kind of stable state. And look, I've heard Sam Altman say this. It might get like that for a while. So we had such, you know, from whenever it was, like December 2022 onwards till now. So maybe we are in a bit of a, well, we're just getting used to using this now, and then obviously I'll be proved wrong, and there'll be some major development in the next week or so.
Yeah. And it's an interesting time, and I talked to a variety of different people on this topic I'm about to sort of talk about. Is when did people refresh their hardware and desktop and laptops, and even servers for that matter, for the Windows 10 migration? I mean, at what point of the curve were they at in their previous hardware to buy new? But that new hardware they had didn't have TPM 2.0, and that hardware they bought was restrictive on certain types of chipsets, because then COVID hit. And at what stage are they on their depreciation of that kit? And when are they going to need to buy new? So is it this year? Is it 2025? Is it 2026? And every organization,
I know a lot of vendors who'd like to know the answer to that.
Yes, indeed.
In particular spaces, we do some stuff around optimizing endpoints and to get more years out of them by optimizing CPU and memory, not throttling. not
Yes.
throttling. Optimizing, very important point, which has been, and I agree, because throttling is not optimizing. Throttling is just the worst thing. You should never do it. It's awful. It just ruins user experience. But yeah, no, that is a really interesting kind of point where we're at now in this. Yeah, because obviously in whenever COVID, what was it, 2020? 2020, yeah, it was 2020.
2020, yeah.
Yeah. And a lot of organizations literally just went and bought every laptop they could on the planet. And as you said, Windows 11 is going to be that kind of point.
Yes.
Now, there is ways and means around that. I've, had to do that, using different tools, but organizations can't do that because they avoid their Microsoft support. But,
Exactly.
on a single laptop, like I had what is it? It's a Dell, it's an XPS. It's a 13. It was, well, it's about 6 or 7 years at this stage now, but it's still a good laptop.
Yeah,
but
I got the same product.
Officially, it can't run Windows 11. Unofficially, it is running Windows 11, but at the same time, organizations can't do that. They have to go down the proper route. And as you said, like, you now have laptops with AI chips and all this, but at the same time, you have to look at numerous factors, cost. Obviously, sustainability is a huge factor and getting bigger and bigger by the day due to the fact that, it's ridiculously warm, and all those other factors. So there is a lot of factors in people migrating, and I think there's going to be a lot of careful thought. And then I think that's why you see so much activity, like Amazon brought out a thin client. Who would have thought of that a couple of years? But I think they're thinking about where we're at now and what's going to happen. They're going, well, people are going to refresh, so why not a really lightweight, sustainable thin client? So and all the other thin client vendors, including several of our partners, would be thinking the exact same thing. So it is kind of like we are at some sort of inflection point when it comes to hardware refresh, and it's going to be really interesting.
It is. I mean, don't want to dwell on bigger, larger topics, but you've got internal VDI infrastructures that may not have had TPM, but they equally would need to have the TPM chip to run Windows 11 VMs and guest machines. And you've got huge hardware spend internally in data centers, or do you move to products such as AVD or Windows 365? So is that going to be the catalyst for that when people start looking at hardware costs, or are they going to make that investment in local hardware?
And there is, as we've seen, I wouldn't go as far as the term that some people have used of backlash against cloud, but there's been definitely a rethink around cloud first, including some vendors that we both know well. Yes, who have changed their strategies because of their customer base. Like, we're the same. We do not. We absolutely support cloud, but at the same time, we support on-prem as well, because 100%. There is a lot of customers in particular sectors that we deal with that will never go to cloud because they're, they run our software on air gap systems in locations. I'd be shocked if I knew. So,
and it's a great synergy as well between for Access IT Automation. We're a big advocate of enabling cloud and enabling applications to run in more modern formats for modern desktops and cloud and different styles of virtual machines. But equally, we support legacy and because you have to, and people operate at different speeds. You can't force people to run your product in a certain way because it's where it might go in 5 years' time. You have to support them the here and now and for the future. So it's a real one of our sort of real embedded company ethos things is not, we're enablers of modern, but we're still going to support you whatever your decision may be. Customer first.
Absolutely, and that's the way it should be. There's lots of big questions in EUC as always, and I think that's a good end point for this particular discussion. David, it's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.
And thanks for letting me know all about what you guys do at Access IT Automation and your integration with FlexApp. And I really enjoyed our discussion around app strategy and its huge importance in what companies are doing.
Massive,
so,
yeah.
Thanks everyone for watching or listening, because we've got both. And we'll see you on the next episode of Liquidware Chats. Thanks very much.